Hi, Vikings. We are back again with document B. This is the yellow paper in your packet. It is the Catalan Atlas. So make sure you have this, and then let's go ahead and get started. Just like with our activity on the pink paper with the Huffington Post article, we realized that we need to read the questions before we can really analyze the document. That goes the same even if the document that we're looking at is a map. Whenever you have something that you're looking at and then you have questions to answer, you always want to look at the questions first. So our first question is number 1, sourcing. What kind of document is this? Who created it and when? Number 2, corroboration. How does the Catalan Atlas compare to the Huffington Post blog post in terms of its depiction of Mansa Musa? Number 3, do you think this is an accurate depiction of Mansa Musa and his wealth? Why or why not? And number 4, on the document, circle one piece of evidence or an image that supports the claim made by the Huffington Post article. So we are going to take a look at the document. Up at the top, the Catalan Atlas is a medieval map from Spain drawn in 1375 by a map maker named Abraham Cresque. Cresque had never visited West Africa, but relied on the accounts of travelers and traders to make his map. Now, I know it doesn't look too big on my screen. It's not too clear on your paper. So let's open up this and do a little bit more in-depth look at the map. So the Catalan Atlas is a huge map. Like it takes up probably, if you laid it out on tables, half of my classroom. And it was written on linen, and it was glued to or adhered to wood. So it was on these huge tablets and just really, really big. What we have right here on the screen right now is just a small portion of the Catalan Atlas. And the greenish areas are waterways, and then the whitish areas are land masses. So you can see Spain and Portugal right here. You can see Great Britain and Ireland up here. You've got Italy's boot right there. So this all is Europe. And then down here you have Africa. My wonderful, you know what we see a lot of? We see a whole lot of lines on this map. The lines represent trade routes. Notice that many converge in, or they go through, Mali, which is circled red on the map right here. So right there is what we're going to zoom in and look on. Before we zoom in, I want you to note how many buildings there are. You've got a bunch in Mali that we're going to look at. You've got a bunch in North Africa, but not very many throughout the rest of Africa, and just a handful in Europe. We'll talk about those buildings in a moment. Let's zoom in closer. So this is the picture that you have. Over here you have a Bedouin or a nomad from another region. So like we saw in the big map, that this is all of the world, the known world at that time. And so this guy right here lives in these tents, is on a camel. He's a nomad. He's not really part of Mali. So even though he's in our picture, we're going to ignore him for now. We talked about the trade lines, and you can see all of the trade lines. So many trade lines going into Mali. So that's where they did their trading and their bartering, and they got their money. Remember, we were trying to decide, was Mansa Musa really the richest man ever? These gold-looking circles up here, it looks like it's a wall, but it's actually the Atlas mountain range. So those represent mountains. We talked about the buildings. You see all of these buildings, right? If they have a flag, then they are representative of a palace. Look at that. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, One, two, three, four, five palaces just in this little part of the map that represents Mali. The other buildings, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I don't even know if I got them all. That's so many. All of those represent mosques. Remember, mosques are temples for the Islam religion, just like churches are temples for Christian religion. Mosques are temples for Islam. And then you've got this guy front and center. Take a wild guess who that man is. Good. That is Mansa Musa. Now you also see a bunch of writing. All of this is in medieval Spanish. Um, I don't know about you, but I don't read medieval Spanish. I don't read medieval English, much less medieval Spanish. So we are going to zoom in on this part right here, and we are going to translate it. This black lord is called Musa Mali. This is also on your paper if you want to follow along on your paper. This black lord is called Musa Mali, lord of the black people of Mali. So abundant is the gold which is found in his country that he is the richest and most noble king in all the land. And that's right there on the map. One last thing before we go back to the questions and answer the questions. One last thing is I want you to notice Mansa Musa is huge. Was he actually that big in real life? Was he really bigger than a palace, bigger than a mosque, bigger than the mountains? No. He is portrayed as larger than life because he was so very, very important. Let's go back. We see all of these people who are portrayed very largely, right? Mansa Musa is one of the larger ones. I mean, we've got these people over here who are a little bit smaller, these people over here who are a little bit smaller. We have the Bedouin who is smaller, but he doesn't actually have a name on the map. But Mansa Musa does because he was so extremely important. Oops, he was so extremely important. Okay, let's go back to our questions now. So what kind of document is this? Who created it and when? Well, right down here at the bottom, it literally gives us the information. It says the source is Abraham Kresk, 1375. But that doesn't tell me what document it is. So this is a, oh my gosh, I feel like Dora the Explorer. I'm asking you about a map. Yeah. So remember the racist strategy. You are going to restate the question. This document is a, it was created by, in, and you're going to fill in the blanks. Number 2, how does the Catalan Atlas compare to the Huffington Post blog post in terms of its depiction of Mansa Musa? So here's where you take and you corroborate, we'll talk more about this, but you take the two pieces of information and you compare them. So is Mansa Musa the same in the Catalan Atlas as he was in our last activity when we learned about, when we first learned about him in the blog post? So you'll say the Catalan Atlas, spell it right, does or does not compare to the Huffington Post blog post in terms of its depiction of Mansa Musa because, and then you'll fill in that blank. So you're doing that, and you're finishing the question. Now, just like our last question and our last activity, do you think this is an accurate depiction of Mansa Musa and his wealth? Why or why not? In this picture, do you think this shows how wealthy Mansa Musa was? Now remember, yesterday we learned that he was worth $400 billion. Does this picture show that? Yes or no? And why or why not? So your sentence stems for this are, I think this is an accurate depiction of Mansa Musa and his wealth because, or if you don't, you say, I think this is not an accurate depiction of Mansa Musa and his wealth because, either way, I don't care what your opinion is. Either way, you are telling me yes or no, it is or is not an accurate depiction of his wealth, and then why. Okay? And then the very last thing that you are doing on the document, so on your copy of the map, you are going to circle one image or piece of evidence that supports the claim made by the Huffington Post article that we read in our last activity. Okie doke. If you have any questions, you are going to ask me, you are going to ask Ms. Dodge, you are going to get in contact with us on Teams or through email or during our meeting, anything that you need, okay? Immediately after finishing this, you are going to move on to document C. Okie doke. All right, go Vikings.